Tonight at Night School, we're talking about careers in racing, and we've got our horse player now, Night School team here from top to bottom, like the Brady Bunch. We've got Joe Christopher, Kate and Bradar, the youngest one in curls, and Jeremy Plunk here. We'll try to tell you a little bit about how we got into the game and how you may get into the game as well and make a career in racing. We'll start first in our personal stories, how we got into it. Joe, I know you were on the degenerate side of it, but Kate and I know you had family background that got you into racing.
Yeah, and those family connections can be really helpful for me, especially with a grandfather that had been a jockey for many years and was serving as a steward when I started on the track, and my dad was training racehorses. I was able to just start hanging out around the barn and doing odd jobs even before you could be licensed. When I was a teenager, I kind of grew up around the racetracks, and anything I could do, if it was in the tack room, just cleaning tack and doing odd jobs, I did, and that kind of was the foot in the door where you started to see how things worked and what jobs there were. And from there, I went into working with the horses, more or less, and that's kind of where I started, because my passion was for the horses first and foremost, and worked as a groom and a hot walker and an exercise rider and a pony girl, and worked my way through college that way.
Joe, you were a regular Joe, a working stiff, as we say in the outside world. You stumbled into racing on a lunch hour, as I recall.
We're 1 minute into this video, and he's already called me a degenerate and a working stiff. But yeah, that's fairly accurate, JP. I was going to college at Columbia, downtown Chicago, working at the Sears Tower. I grew up in Cicero and Berwyn, Illinois. There are no farms. There are no horses. There are no thoroughbreds. Yes, Sportsman's in Hawthorne. The racetracks were not too far from me, but my parents didn't have any gamble in them, so I never went to the racetrack. Really got my first full exposure into horse racing going to the off-track betting parlor on Jackson Street while I was going to school. And I remember looking up at the television screen one day and seeing Tony Kobitz in the paddock at Arlington dressed in a suit on a microphone talking about racing, and I said to myself, they pay that guy to do that? That's what I want to do. And I started writing every story for school about horse racing, learning as I went along, got a job working in customer relations on the weekends at Arlington Park, and kind of worked my way up from the ground up.
It's kind of a similar story for me, working up from the bottom. I took an internship at Churchill Downs in 1994 in the lead up to the Breeders' Cup. I had just finished my senior year at the University of Oklahoma, and I was convinced I was going to be a sports writer and cover college football and basketball and things like that. But I've been a racing fan my entire life, and I had a professor who said, do you want to go take an $8 an hour job somewhere, or do you want to go take an internship for the Breeders' Cup and follow something you really love? He's like, if you love sports writing and you love a sport like horse racing, try to marry the two. And I have Norman Bell, a professor, to thank for that. And he got me on the path of going to Churchill Downs for that internship. And the rest, as they say, was building blocks up through the industry. You know, my family wasn't involved in racing at all. But my dad, my entire life has been taking us to the track as fans, he and my brother and myself. So, we got into it as a fan and through education and through internship programs and things like that, I was able to make a career out of it. But guys, as you well know, starting out as a sports writer or a turf writer like my story, or a TV paddock host like Joe or Caton in the stable area, none of us are doing that same job anymore. Being versatile is a key to working in the racing industry. Would you say, Caton?
Yeah, it really is. And the thing is that is great about racing, there's so many different avenues you can follow. And for me, having the opportunity first to see all the horsemen and get to know them, and then move more toward the front side and get to know kind of a completely different side of the sport that I really didn't experience through my parents or my family, was the best of both worlds. And in every respect, it was the same, which was you sort of had to just prove yourself every day. You had to be willing to take maybe a lower paying job just for the opportunity to get the experience and see what it was all about. But as you did so, you always had the opportunity to move up a little bit too. So I went from ponying horses to then right out of college working in the press box. The first job in the press box at Arlington was writing some notes and mostly making copies and keeping statistics. And that year they didn't have even a press box per se. That's the rebuilding year. But that allowed me to meet some new people and to see other areas that you could work and you could pursue. And before I knew it, somebody actually had left the track. There weren't as many people left, and I all of a sudden was running the press box and doing all the press box notes. So there's any number of avenues you can take, and you can try things out too and see what you like the best.
Nope.
I would have to agree with Caden in that most of us that wind up working in media at a racetrack have that paper pushing, pencil pushing job in a press box somewhere to kind of get us started. And, then you can pay your dues and work your way up. This is a specialized sport. When I worked at Hawthorne, they really didn't have anyone doing the in between race TV. I did a little bit of television work at Arlington, so they threw me on the air. Eventually did the morning line work, eventually did some writing for the program. You get a lot of experience in a lot of different areas working in horse racing, but we have no paid vacations. We have no benefits. It's kind of a vagabond gypsy type job, whether you're a track announcer, a racing office person bouncing from racetrack to racetrack, or even a notes writer. There are very few year-round meets, so you definitely have to make your sacrifices in this game, and we do because we love it, and we have to reinvent ourselves almost every year, like you said, JP.
The seasonal employee tag is something that really goes with a lot of folks at the racetrack. When I took my first job with Remington Park back in 1995, after I finished my internship and had a cup of coffee with a magazine that lasted less than a year, I took a seasonal job with the racetrack, and then you get bounced around. And I did some stuff with Equibase, which ended up sending me to Arapahoe Park in Colorado, of all places, before coming back and settling. It took 3 or 4 months for me to get a full-time job in the racing industry, and that's what happens at a lot of places. It's hard to get year-round full-time work. But if you can mix it, say you have a side job or a job that you do for a living, but you don't feel like it's really a career, I think racing is a place where if you can marry the 2 hours, during the course of the week, if you can work part-time at Walgreens to help pay for your apartment and work at the track as a passion 3, 4, 5, 6 months out of the year as the season goes on, it's a great way to get in, dip your toe into the water. Because as Joe said, they'll find work for you at the track. Most places are understaffed, and if there's a position that needs filled, they're going to look for the guy or the gal at the next desk and point to you and say, can you do it? I got thrown in calling charts because we lost our chart caller at Remington Park, and it turned out to be a couple-year career for me. But my training on the job was literally a couple weeks to try to learn the position.
Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
Well, I was just saying that it's interesting. You have to also be willing to try something different every once in a while when the opportunity presents itself, because I just happened to be in South Florida one year and wasn't working steadily at the track, but had jobs lined up some other places, and all of a sudden heard from a friend of a friend that they needed some help at the sales when they came to Calder over the winter. So that was something totally different, but again, in the industry and related to racing, and I was aware of it just from a friend of a friend. And it wasn't, again, a high-paying job, although it was fair pay for a full day's work. And you basically just ran the tickets back and forth between the buyers and the auction company. But you learned a whole different side of it. And I met some people that later on down the line were able to help me with jobs in other places. So networking becomes really useful. And in this game, I think more than any other, you'll find a lot of the executives or people at the top move around too. So if you have that flexibility and you establish those connections, they can take you just about anywhere.
And you know what, to add to what Caton said too, over the course of time, been based in Chicago almost my entire career in racing, went to Rockingham Park for a summer, went to Philadelphia a couple of years to work for the Racing Network, mostly Chicago, but venturing out to different places for big events. Horse racing is like one great big dysfunctional extended family. All the people you meet, all the friends you make, from the jockeys to the trainers to the people that work at the racetrack to the people that work in the media, you really meet some great people and formulate some fantastic relationships with lifelong friends. And that's one of the things that I can say I enjoy most about working in horse racing. You work in an industry with a bunch of people that are passionate about the sport from different angles, but we all have one goal in mind, and that's to love what we do. And there's no price tag that you can pay to put on that in enjoying your job every single day. There are some pitfalls, there are some things that you have to make sacrifices for, when you make a career in racing, but when you love your job, it makes life a heck of a lot easier.
Well, in closing, I want to ask you guys, we've got a group of newbies here tonight as far as becoming racing employees or future employees. Do you recommend they make that leap?
I think one of the most important things you can do is make connections and reach out to people who seem like they're doing something that you might be interested in doing it. And I've had a lot of people, even through night school, that have contacted me at different times or in my travels that have come up. And most of the people in this business, I think, are very willing to kind of share their passion and their expertise and give people some suggestions along the way. So it can't ever hurt to try. You should always reach out and try to contact those people, particularly in this industry. I think more than any other I've seen, they're willing to at least give you their time and offer some suggestions, if nothing else. And sometimes it can even lead to a job. That was kind of how I made my way, and I think there have been several other people that have gotten some jobs and gotten their feet wet in the industry by doing the exact same thing.
We have all had our mentors. We have all had people that have helped us along the way. Dave Sirico from the Chicago Tribune was a big factor in me getting my career started. Dave Zenner from Arlington Park, who I still work with to this day. So you know what? I want to be able to pay that back to people. I get emails from people all the time. I know Caton and JP do as well. And you just try to guide these people and explain to them that you have to pay your dues. You're not just going to jump from being a paper handicapper sitting in front of your computer betting the races to being some prominent front of the line person who's doing television work. You have to work your way up. You have to build a reputation. And if you're going to be in racing and dedicate yourself to this profession, you have to be willing to take the time to build your reputation and put yourself in a position to succeed.
The good thing about the internet is it's out there and it's accessible to everyone. And forums like Night School and what we're doing now, we can talk about these kind of things, but you can actually put yourself in the limelight and put yourself in action. Create a blog, create a video, a video notebook in YouTube. Get yourself something on paper if you want to get into the handicapping end of things. Show people what you can do. There's no better thing you can do in the world than proofreading. And of course, we're talking about horse racing, and we got the flies coming around here just to show you how accurate of a depiction it is tonight. The flies are swarming, so I think that means it's time to get out of here and get back into the chat.
Let's do it. Let's enjoy the rest of this night school, and we'll be discussing different careers in racing for the rest of the show. And we love what we do, and if you want to get into it, there's a lot of different avenues. We'll discuss all of those tonight, JP and Caden.